What's going on, guys? My name is Austin. This is Dan. This is the Bodies in Business podcast. And today we're going to talk about working with dev teams to build a mobile app, because there are millions of mobile apps out there. And I think both of us have had some experience in this area. This is what I thought to begin with. I'll build a mobile app. It'll run on its own. It's like a freaking lawnmower. Once you build it, we're good to go. We just got to oil it every now and then. But that is far, far from the truth. And I started on this journey probably 7 years ago. And how about you, Dan? So what's your biggest advice for somebody when building a mobile app with a dev team?
So I think it's a little early for me to just jump right into advice, because I have been a product manager, not on mobile apps, for the majority of my career so far. At my first startup, I worked on a company that had a cloud product as well as we shipped on-premise software. My last company, kind of same. I was working on the platform back end. It was like a B2B type product. And so I'm now a mobile app product manager, and it's different territory for sure. A lot of concepts are the same, but it's new space for me. And so part of the reason why I wanted to talk about this today was to pick your brain and hear what's working.
There's not a lot to pick in that brain. No, it's so interesting. Like I said, so I'll go through the iterations of how I started a mobile app. So originally I was like, you know what? I need to have a mobile app because I want to be able to service a lot of people in the health and wellness area. So I was like, okay, in order to do that, in order to scale, I'll need some type of mobile app. I could probably do some type of web application, but I was like, mobile apps were big, in 2018, 2019. So the first thing I did was I hired a dev team out of India. Okay. And I had no clue. Austin was literally just like, I'm just going to help. Like, I'm going to tell him, dude, literally, it was the most naive, one of the most naive things, probably not the most naive, but one of the most naive things I've done in the app development world. I basically reached out to an app developer, like broker, essentially, I guess, potentially. And they were like, all right, we have a team in India that can build you one. They just need to know, requirements, all these other things. I was like, cool. That was an awful experience. And I didn't know what awful experience was at the time, but it was an awful experience. They built an app that was real clunky for me. And I was honestly just trying to build something that took pictures of food. And then from there, it was like, okay. But to get into that was overseas app development first is effing hard. Like it's insane. Like just like that was the first step. Was if I went back to 8 years ago, Austin, I'd be like, stop, don't spend any money right now at all on this. Do not. That's my first.
Yeah. Do you remember me? I feel like I told you that at some point.
People tell me stop doing stuff all the time, but I do not listen sometimes. So
yeah.
No. Anyways, so hired the team out of India. Dude, they ended up like dissolving internally their team. And so like I had a different project manager at one point. I was like, oh my God, this is so bad. I started looking on Upwork. I'm just going to leave that one at that. Like it was like, okay, this wasn't a good experience. I probably wasted about $10,000 or $15,000 on that. And I say wasted, it was, learning. But anyways, then I went on Upwork and I was trying to find a better development team. I was like, this India team's not working. I want to find a better development team. I ended up getting in touch with a guy from Ukraine. His name's Evan. I'm actually working with Evan now, which is kind of a funny story. And gosh, I got to speed up with this because I know there's other questions, but like this matters because it's been a journey. And so met up with Evan. Evan was like, yeah, we can build your app. He looked at my old app. He was like, yeah, they basically built it like it was a website. That's why it's so clunky, all these other things. He was like, all right, we're going to build you an app. He starts building me an app for about a year and a half. I was paying him. And then the war kicked off in Ukraine in 2022. And then all of a sudden it was just like, okay, well, this isn't going to work anymore. Like he kind of went silent for like 3 months. And I was like, all right, I gotta find somebody else. And it was no bad blood. Like it was like things were going well with him. And that was the kick in the teeth. That was like, it's finally going well. It's finally going well. Like he knows what he's doing. We're in contact every week. This is really working. And he was actually teaching me a lot about app development. That was the great thing is I was learning a lot from him. And that's what, then he went dark and I was like, all right, I got to find somebody new. That's when I hired Sean. We literally met at a Taco Tuesday, sat down. I told him what I was doing. He was like, I want a side project. Lo and behold, he didn't know what he was getting into because he was like, oh, this is going to be fun. Like I've done some startup stuff in the past. Essentially, I worked with Sean for basically 2 years straight. One was part-time, 1 year was part-time, and then 1 year was full-time. What I'll say is if you're going to build an app and you are not technical, and we can get into that, in a second because we can use Claude and stuff now. If you were not technical back then, the best thing for you to do is find a one-on-one app developer in your area, a friend or somebody, so that you could see them every day. Or if that's what you want to do, full send, right? If you wanted to go, hey, I need to be with this person all the time. We need to be talking, that type of thing. That's the best way to do it. Not hire an overseas person, because that's just that. Yeah. And so then I made the most progress in the freaking world when I was working with Sean, when he was with full-time. When he was part-time, it was very steady because he was actually had a full-time job. So he was doing stuff on the weekend. So we got it to a steady baseline. And then when he went full-time, it was very much like, oh man, like we're actually seeing really good progress, like week to week. Like we were, submitting to the app stores every week. Anyways, so that was like a light bulb moment for me. I was like, dude, if you want to do this, you really have to have somebody full-time there with you working, meeting every morning, literally. Anyways, so then Sean went back to a regular job and he was like, hey, I can't do this anymore full time. I was like, no worries. I actually reached back out to Evan, the Ukrainian guy. And I said, hey man, I need a software developer. And he was like, oh yeah, I can help you out. Stepped in. Basically, it was a nice, clean handoff from Sean to the new development team. Although, definitely not as fast now, but it is more of a maintenance mode, and we're making feature updates here and there. That's such a short but long version of it. Like the biggest takeaway from that is, if you want to build an app, one, you need yourself to learn how to code, because it's very easy now. Apparently, or it's easier. If you can take 6 months to teach yourself using Claude Code how to code an app, that's what you should do. Because at this point in time, if you really want to build an app, you can take the time to do it. I think if you have technical capabilities, if you don't have any technical capabilities whatsoever, you need to hire one single developer that you will talk to every single day, that lives in the United States and that lives in your area, so you can meet in person. If they don't live in your area, someone you can literally get on the phone with every single morning and talk to and know what they're doing. But it's so beneficial to have somebody in person that you can talk to every now and then, because a lot of times you don't know specifically what work is being done on their side unless you're literally seeing their commits, like we talked about, Dan, to see how many lines of code they're doing, right? And so I think that's a huge thing, because you don't really know all the work that's going into it. So having someone very, very close to you that are working on it, that's it, man. It's not a wrench where you build it once and then you're good. You are working on bugs 80% of the time to make everything run smoothly, especially when you're scaling and bringing on more people. And you find something new every week that you have to improve. The verbiage I heard was, you're working on bugs 80% of the time, QA, and then 20% of the time you're making improvements that are significant. But it's a slog, man. It's not something where you're just going to be able to build it, forget it, and it just goes. You're going to have to put in work. As soon as you make that decision to build an app, it is going to be your job.
Yeah. The point that you made that I agree with the most is like about that focus and having the dedication to it. So for me, I joined this team and I'm been assigned to this one mobile app, and it's actually running across 3 platforms. So there's a backend that services all 3 of the clients, so iOS, Android, as well as a web app. And they're separate teams, and they're also juggling other projects as well. There's other apps and other things that they're working on. And so that's one of the first things as I came into the company. I'm like, listen, you brought me on to be like very laser focused on this one app, this one thing. And I want like a commensurate investment on the engineering side as well. Like I want them to be 100% focused on this. And then it's my job to make sure that they have like a steady backlog of important work that they're doing, and they understand why they're doing it.
That's huge.
And so that's at least been my experience so far. And that's something that I'm planning to roll out in the next like week or so, honestly, is like, okay, I'm going to grab a few of these engineers. We're going to set up meetings. We're going to set up dashboards to track how we're progressing along these goals. And we're going to be really focused on this one thing.
That's smart. And I think having, in my opinion, I think having a team meeting with all 3 every week to go over aligned incentives and focus is immense. Obviously, you could like you probably should meet with each one of them every day just to potentially just to check in. Maybe that's a little too much, but in the beginning, maybe not. Maybe in the beginning, it's like it's going to help you guys row in the same direction and have those touch points. But every week, there should be, this is where we're rowing the boat. All three of us are rowing the boat in this section, because right now, literally, I'm working with, we have a bug on the Android side and we can't go anywhere until that's fixed. We can't do anything on the iOS side until the Android bug is fixed, because it is a core piece of what we're doing. And what I've learned is most of my focus has been on the iOS side, because I have an iOS device. 90% of users are iOS. That's just what I've dealt with. And so most of my focus has been on iOS. When I have the most problems is with Android, because people say it's clunky, there's bugs, there's something like that. And it's like, oh my God, we've got to have two products that are very, very good. Obviously, you can't make them perfectly the exact same. But to your point, I think that is the other thing that I will say about dev teams is sometimes they don't care about the why. They just want to get the work done, because they're just like, just give me the work. I will do it. But to your point, I think them understanding the why and how we're doing this will help them understand why they need to build it in a certain way and not to cut corners maybe.
Yeah. I mean, and that's exactly my point. The experience so far for them has been just kind of like lobbing features over the fence, right? Leadership or whoever will come in and say like, oh, you know, I've had this idea, or I heard one user say this thing. And so they'll put that in a ticket or whatever, they'll talk about it. And then the engineers kind of just go off and run with it. And what you wind up with is an experience that's not very
You're
cohesive,
the continuity.
right? It's just like, exactly. And so it's just like a smattering of features, and maybe some products, like there's value to that. But my experience has been it's not. Like, more is not always necessarily better. And having someone to like orchestrate and oversee everything and actually like pull those like user journeys and those threads together is really like where I see the value moving forward, especially in a world where, like you were pointing out, AI makes it so much easier to just like ship things. You really need to pause and ask the question, like, is this the right thing?
I think one thing, just to iterate, just to piggyback on top of that, though, what I'll say in the beginning, for me, our core feature of FlyFit is step tracking, essentially, right? Step tracking. And that's like the core, like, and it's at the core of my being and Fly Bodies is, hey, how much are you moving throughout the day? Like, literally, like, we have to laser focus on that and then build out from that. And so what I'll say is that feature is not super sexy and it's not differentiating. So from my perspective, I felt like we had to build other features around that quickly, so that people were like, why do I need to come to FlyFit to just check my steps when I can do that on Apple Health, right? And so I think sometimes in the beginning, I think making it look prettier than it actually, or like making it look a little more fluffed up, right? Pumping the chest up a little bit, like with some air, so that you're like, okay, we're more than just a step tracking app, right? But too much of that, you stray away from what your core function is, and you start losing sight of like, what are we actually trying to do here? So it's a balance of like trying to add valuable features without straying away too much of what you're actually trying to do, because you're like, we need to like kind of add some flair to this. And then you start straying away and you're like, okay, we got to get back to center. And so that's what I'll say is like, sometimes you build features that you're just kind of like, WTF, why are we building this? And it's like more of just like a, hey, we need to add more value in a way that we don't know for sure if it's going to add significant value or not add any value at all. So I think that's also a thing too, is like, we have to try some things, and that might not be, so that can be a thing. Kind of rambled there.
Yeah. And it's still good though that you at least have that core anchor. Like you know that is the primary value that you're going to build around, which is like show people how much they're moving, and then we can add in fun and competition and other aspects of it. But that's like the core thing. And that's what I'm actually lacking in my current product. There's like 4 different pillars that were sort of like, we have, you know, we talk to users and this is what we heard them say. We said they care about finance, fitness, and their career, right? And so they kind of just like put all those things in the mobile app, and the user, it's not really clear which one they're supposed to go to, right? Like some people might care about one thing, some people might care about the other. And so there is this like paradigm in tech and when you're building mobile apps, like, okay, just like try stuff, and let the users tell you. I don't think that's 100% true. You need to have a much more opinionated stance on what value they're expecting, what the promises of the app and why they signed up in the first place. And you really need to like guide the flow and guide the experience around that first. And then you could like test things within that. But if you just like throw a bunch of stuff at people, there's too many things competing for their competition. They're not really going to be like, oh yeah, let me just like putz around here and see what works, even if I'm not getting any value out of it. So having that focus
and you hit definitely on another chord where there are millions of apps, right? Like there are millions. And so it just goes back to your feature that you are like focusing on has to be the best feature out of millions of apps if people are even going to stick with it, right? So to your point, you're like, oh, we're trying to do 4 things well. But what I think also is helpful in that is with those 4 things, at some point, it'll like laser down to one. Like it'll start to converge on one thing where you're like, okay, we got to forget about these 3. We got to burn these 3 boats. And then we're literally just going to get in this boat and we're just going to row down that boat. It's tough to do that. I'm still struggling with that because there are certain opportunities within my company that I'm like, okay, the challenges and the mileage clubs feature on my app are something that I can see scaling and that work. Like it's definitely something that I'm like, I go to schools and they want to do this and it's fun and we're building that out. But then there's this other feature on the side that is like documenting workouts feature that has potential. And so it's like, man, hopefully, I'm eating my words here, but like, hopefully we can leverage that feature of the app to help, maybe another organization that we're talking to. But like, it is so tough, man. It's so tough. I really, really wish we had enough revenue coming in the challenges department so I could go, all right, just challenges, right? Just challenges. But for me, usually I don't. And so then that well dries up and I go, okay, I have to create other revenue streams. And so that's where I start like, kind of getting a little scared because I'm like, okay, and then you lose focus, blah, blah, blah. But like, I don't know, man. I still think you always have to keep your options open, but like if the team is laser focused on a certain goal, that's the biggest thing, right? If everybody's like, hey, we're all doing this thing together for the next 3 months at least. Okay, cool. We know that. And then after those 3 months, we'll learn and then maybe pivot a little bit or like change the course of direction. But that's huge. That's huge.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned a couple times about not necessarily knowing what your dev team is working on. What does your battle rhythm look like with them? And what do you use to convey to them what your requirements are and how you like track how they're progressing? Because I get it. Like initially starting out, you were just kind of like, okay, I'm just like learning as I go. But now after 5 years or whatever, since you've been doing this 7 years, you probably have a better system.
You would think. But so with Sean, my one-on-one app developer lived in the US, like we would on Fridays, we'd basically have a requirements meeting for the next week. We would say, okay, this is the feature we want to build. These are all the requirements we want to make. This is what we wanted to do, all these things. And so with him, it was so much easier to do that because every day we were meeting and every day or every week we knew what we were going to ship. And every week we knew that, okay, if there's a bug in it, we're not shipping it or something like that, right? We wouldn't move on. So that was very, very helpful. I got into a great rhythm with him and he was very detail oriented, which was helpful for me, but also kind of a push and take because I'd be like, hey, we want to build this thing and this is what it wants. And he goes, no, I need to know exactly. Like, so it was good from that sense, but also slowed things down sometimes. On the other hand, on this other software developer team, I do have a one-on-one software dev, but he is way less detail oriented. And he will literally say, I'll give him, and I've actually taken a step back now, but because I've said, hey, we need to focus on this, literally just this one thing. Because what's interesting is I would give him sometimes 5 things. He would build them all out and it was like, they're all done. They're all done and they all work well. And I'm like, whew, like this is awesome. Right. Yeah, but now we're in kind of a little crux because there's other things going on, but like I've had to scale back now to say, hey, we need to focus on this one thing and focus and like this one thing has to work in order for us to move on. And so we're hyper focused on this one thing because it makes a big difference. But to your point, I have gotten back to the battle rhythm of, hey, Monday we start building, Tuesday test flight, Wednesday fix bugs, Thursday test flight, Friday we ship to the app store if it works. And then also Friday, I will send more feature updates or bug updates or whatever if we want to do the next week. So that's kind of how the battle rhythm. I want to very iterative. I'm very iterative these days where it's like every week we should do a small thing so it turns into a big thing.
I like it. Shipping on a weekly cadence. That's good. You didn't really touch on project tracking. It sounds like it's a small enough team.
Exactly.
And you're able, you have
exactly.
enough
It's
trust
one
in your
person.
team. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. So, I mean, you've said a few things there that were kind of between the lines that I want to call out. One is like every dev is going to be different. And so having someone who's a little bit more senior and has like a little bit more autonomy is gold, right? And that's why, to me, being able to explain the why is super important. Okay, like if you have a dev team that's more junior or they really want like every single requirement laid out, like they're going to expect you to provide that. And if you don't, it's not going to show up as you want it. But if you're able to have a more senior guy and they understand what we're trying to do, what kind of behavior you're trying to influence, like if you're focusing on revenue, retention, whatever it is, like they could kind of fill those gaps, right? And so you could communicate the vision and they're able to like make decisions on their own of like, okay, it should look like this or perform this way, whatever it might be. So having that senior dev that's also like stateside or same time zone or, you know, that you could meet with frequently is key. For us, so I've been in Jira and Atlassian like my entire PM career. My new company uses Linear, which is just like way better, way more streamlined, way more modern. What you would expect for like a good project tracking tool. I have it connected to Claude and I was in Cowork and I was just kind of riffing with it on some like foundational pieces that I want to put in place, getting like instrumentation, telemetry, analytics, like missed events that I want captured. I was just like, hey, you know, here's what I want to be able to answer. Here's where we're currently at, and here's what we're missing. And I was just going back and forth on it, and I asked it for a plan, and it just went off, created the project in Linear, broke out a bunch of like sub-tickets to the different teams back end and front end, tagged dependencies, set up a timeline, like everything. It took me like 10 minutes tops. And like that's like a big part of what a product manager, you know, is really supposed to be doing. And it seems like that workflow and that job is collapsing down to just like my initial prompting session and making sure that like it's the right thing that we're focused on and we're doing and making sure I can communicate that to the team. But it is a crazy new world that we're entering into, even, you know, with AI. And so if you're not working with it today, figure out how to use it in every part of your workflow. I think it's just going to make you move a lot.
That was so helpful. And it was a good wrap up on, I know you got to bounce here in a second, but that was a good basically summary of using AI as a product manager or program manager or something like that, because you literally, the prompt is able to, you know, give you everything that you need in order to make these things connect on the back end and be able to track everything. Because for me right now, it's just one developer. You have multiple different teams, multiple different developers. So it's like a must. So it's one of those things I'm just like, man, it's scary for me because I'm like, I have to start like leaning more that way, because if I want to scale, I'm going to have to bring on more developers and it's going to get crazier. Maybe I'll just want one developer forever. No. Anyways.
You could get a lot more done with a leaner team that's AI powered. You know, like you could use one agent to generate that plan, and then you could use other agents to implement it and QA it and do all this stuff. Like it's moving fast. And so if you are operating lean, make sure you're 100%. Leaning into AI.
That is great advice. Love it. All right, Dan. Dude, this is great. I always, when I think about these conversations, I'm like, I am the raw version of Dan. Dan just like goes in and synthesizes everything. I just spew information and just talk. And so this is why I love talking to Dan, is because he is very much like more articulate in the sense of like using the right words. When I hear him talk, I'm like, man, that just sounds so much better than me just rambling on and being like, dude, fucking crazy.
I appreciate that. And it's interesting perspective because like you are a product manager, but as a founder and operating on a small team,
a lot of hats.
You have to be much more ruthless in how you prioritize. And you are focused on like ROI with your development team. And you're focused on building features that are going to drive revenue and important metrics. And so it's a unique perspective. All right, big dog, I got to drop.
Thank you. Appreciate you
chatting.
See ya. You too.
Have a great weekend. See ya.